Hello students, welcome to this English class. Let us now start our story today. The story is by a man of Odisha who writes in both English and Odia languages. He is a very established writer. He is one of the greatest Indian writers writing in English. He was the professor of English in an international university. He writes in English, he writes in Odia, and almost all his writings are published in both the languages. He is good at both the languages. In English and Odia he writes. He has got the Rajya Sahitya Academy Award. He has got the Kendra Sahitya Academy Award. He has also got a lot of international awards and a very established writer. Dear students, do you know who I am hinting at? Who is he? He is Professor Manoj Das. The name is very popular with us. Everybody of India knows this name. He was professor of English in a very reputed university, Sri Aurobindo International University, Pondicherry. The students, Professor Das is a prolific writer. He writes in English, he writes in Odia, in both the languages. He has given his best. Professor Manoj Das is an Indian writer par excellence. He is such a writer who will be remembered by the Indians for his writings. In his writings we find there is a kind of reflection of the Indian culture, Indian tradition, Indian setting. He writes in English. English language is just a vehicle of expression. Professor Das wants to carry the Indian culture in general and the culture of Odisha in particular, because he wants to carry it to the western world. The world should know what is there in Odisha. The world should know what we have in India, and our culture, our tradition should be reflected in the literature which should carry to the western world. The western world should know the values and traditions of Odisha, the values and traditions of India. So, there is a kind of Indian setting in his writings. There is a kind of setting of Odisha in his writings. You will find in his writings there is a reflection of the village life of Odisha. The characters are thoroughly Odia, the setting thoroughly Odia. Everything, the forest, the trees, the environment, everything is about Odisha. And English is the only language which can carry these things to the western world. Therefore, English helps him to translate the culture and carry it to the western society, western world. All the people of the world should know what we have in our culture. And Professor Manoj Das, who was the formerly professor of English at Sri Aurobindo University, International University, Pondicherry, is a prolific writer in both English and Odia. He has a unusually keen insight into the human nature. he has analyzed the human nature in a beautiful way. He blends realism with humor, pathos and satire. Dear students, humor, pathos and satire, these are the important vehicles of his thoughts. Monos thus tries to translate the culture, and the language that he uses is full of humor, full of pathos, full of satire. He does not criticize anything, he tries to keep things before us, and the reader knows the things automatically, but he does not criticize anybody else. He does not, he simply uses certain words of humor. This text is full of humor, pathos and satire. What is a satire? Satire is a poetic device actually. Satire is the amendment of vices by correction. We use satire, dear students, to correct the incorrect, to correct the wrongdoers. The motto of the writer, the motto of the satirist is to amend, is to correct the character of the mischief mongers, of the wrongdoers. So, satire is meant for correcting human vices. The motto is to change the vices into virtues. We have come across a lot of writers who have used satire, but here is Monos Das, who makes satire, who satirizes, but he does not use any caustic words, he does not use any taunting, sarcastic, biting words, he never uses any corrosive words, he uses words of genial humor, he tries to inculcate in the mind of the reader the satirical aspect, which happens to be the vehicle here to change the vices, and the motto is to correct the vices into virtues. And the text for us is mystery of the missing calf. Dear students, have you come across any mystery in life? If yes, it is all right. If no, read this text. It will tell you what mystery is. So, what is mystery? Is it something unknown? Is it something strange? Is it something hidden from others? What is it then? It is mystery. Mystery is strange, mystery is unknown, mystery is hidden. The Bermuda Triangle is a mystery, because it is not completely known. The black hole is a mystery, because we do not know anything completely about these things. They remain a mystery. When they will be known to the world, they will not be mystery. So, mystery is something that remains unknown, that remains strange, that remains hidden from others. So, the story is the mystery of the missing calf. Mystery of the missing calf. A calf is missing, but it remains a mystery. The story suggests, what does the story suggest to you? Is it serious? Is it humorous? Is it a treatment of a human nature? The answer is yes. Everything is rolled into one. The story is serious, the story is humorous, the story is the treatment of human nature. Manoj Das makes the analysis of human nature, the social life, the political life of human existence are dissected, are properly taken care of in this text, and therefore, if we come to know that Professor Manoj Das tells us the human nature. Human nature is actually very mysterious. It is very difficult to unravel human character, human nature. Human nature is very difficult to study. Inscrutable is a human's heart. It is very difficult to scrutinize human heart. Human mind is full of intricate and complex aspects. How can we understand human life? Professor Das makes the analysis of the mystery of the missing calf, and in this text he juxtaposes two important characters. Two leading characters I have taken here, particularly the political characters, people aspiring for being politicians, and who behave to be different from the other common people. Common people are very lowly, they think, and they stand different from others, and they are behaved in a different way. Politicians want to be respected, and respect automatically goes to them, because people have no other way, and they have to pay tribute to the politicians, because the politicians try to grasp everything. The politicians try to grab everything, they want to control every aspect of life. Therefore, dear students, this text tells us about human life, because human life has a lot of aspects, and here Professor Das tells us about the political aspect of human life. This text tells you how human life has a lot of morbid thoughts, and people want to be politicians who want to be respected in society, and rich people have a different place in society, and they want to control everything, and the common people, they are always neglected, and the politicians want to command respect from others. This is what he says in this text. Yes, dear students, let us again come to the text, the mystery of the missing calf by Professor Manoj Das. What is the story about? What is the text about? The text has a narrator who narrates the entire story. There are two leading characters here. One is the minister Babu Birkishore. We have two important characters. One is Babu Birkishore, who happens to be the Minister of Fisheries and Fine Arts of Odisha, of my state, he says, and a village patriot whose name is Sri Maharana of a post independent India. You know, the names themselves tell us that they are from Odisha, the Odia characters. the names are typically Odia characters, Babu Bir Kishore and the other is Sri Maharana. The names are typically Odia. So, dear students, how they behave? Sri Maharana happens to be a well to do man, he is, and so he Sri Maharana happens to be a well to do man, means a very prosperous, rich man, a wealthy man in the area, and he was a rich man having a lot of landed property. So, Sri Maharana happens to be a well to do man having a lot of property, having a lot of wealth, riches, and his was the only pakka house in the area of 20 villages. It was a pre-independence era. When India became independent, you know, India was at that time very poor because of the English people were ruling over the country, and it was under British hegemony, British aggrandizement, British rule. And at that time when people were very poor, people of Odisha were very poor, but people of Odisha and people of India both, they were very poor because they were exploited. English people exploited Indians like anything, and the property of India was carried to England, and they exploited the Indians. India became very poor and so also Odisha. People were very poor, but Sri Maharana was a rich man. He had a lot of landed property, and his house was the only pakka house. All people had kacha houses, pakka house and kacha house, you know. People had mud houses, thatched houses, but Sri Maharana had, his house was the only pakka house in the 20 villages, not only in his village. In the nearby 20 villages, his house was the only pakka house. This is how the writer describes. He had 2 ponds full of choice fish and a number of well cared for cows. He had 2, so he was a rich man, a very prosperous man, a rich and a wealthy person, and he had a lot of landed properties, also 2 ponds in which a lot of choice fish were there, and he had also cows. So, he got he had everything. He had land, he had fish, he had cows. So, he had everything. He was a happy villager. So, Sri Maharana was a happy villager. Now, when India became independent, the political system changed and the legislators were elected, MLAs were elected to the legislature, and Sri Maharana organized a reception ceremony in honor of the minister. So, who is the minister? I told you in the just in the previous section that Babu Bir Kishore was the minister. He was a minister of the fisheries and fine arts. He became the first minister after independence. You know what happens when a man becomes a legislator or MLA, or then he becomes a minister, what happens? Many people become his friends, many people swarm around him, many people surround him. What is their motive? Their motive is to gain wealth and power. The intention is like this, and therefore, Sri Maharana is also like that. He organizes a reception ceremony in honor of the minister, and his intention was to develop a closeness towards the minister. His intention was to develop a close relationship with the minister for his political rise, so that he will rise politically in future. This is the reason for which he organized a reception ceremony in honor of the honorable minister. While the minister was retiring, Jhandu, here is a character, Jhandu. Who is Jhandu? So, Jhandu is a very typical character. Jhandu is it creates a kind of humor, and the name Jhandu itself is also humorous. And he says Jhandu was a monkey. When the minister was retiring, resting, Jhandu, the monkey, took away the minister's cap secretly and it disappeared into the grove, into the forest, into the tree. Nobody knew it. A mighty search was made for that. Sri Maharana was very nervous for that, because he was the organizer of the reception ceremony, and if the cap of the minister will be stolen by somebody else, will be taken away by others, by somebody else, it will hurt the minister. If something will hurt the minister, that will be against his political rise, against the political rise of Sri Maharana. Therefore, he became very much nervous, and therefore, the minister was retiring, and Sri Maharana fabricated a plot, and he said that a nobleman had taken it away to preserve it as a valuable possession, and after that the story took a twist when Jhandu appeared on the scene with the cap on his head. This was the thing that we find here, and this is the brief summary of the text, which we shall do at length, and the brief summary tells you about this text. We shall do it hereafter at length. Yes, dear students, we have already described the text in a nutshell, the summary of the text, and today again let us now make a textual analysis of the text, Mystery of the Missing Cap by Professor Manoj Das. When we go to the unit 1 of the text, we come to know that Sri Maharana is a well-to-do man in the area. His house was the only house, Pakka house, in the area of 20 villages. So, you think from this how rich he was. His house was the only Pakka house in the area of 20 villages, and it indicates that he was a rich man, a very well-to-do man, a very prosperous, wealthy man. And the writer says, his house shone like a tourist place. It looked like a tourist place, because if you you go to a tourist place, to visit a tourist place, people go to visit that house, because nobody had such a house in the nearby 20 villages, and people in the area went to see the house. And while passing by, people stopped to have a look at it. The passer-by does not miss the house. While going that way, the passers-by stood there for some time and looked at the house, because it was a very gorgeous house, a very beautiful house. The house is like a tourist place in the area of 20 villages. Yes, dear students, Sri Maharana had 2 ponds full of choice fish and number of well cared for cows. He had 2 ponds. From this we know that he was a very rich man. Poor people did not have any ponds. Poor people did not have any ponds of fish. As he was a rich man, he had 2 ponds at his disposal, and both the ponds are full of choice fish. He had also a number of well cared for cows, from whom the cows also gave a plenty of milk. So, he could get a lot of grains, he could get a lot of fish, he could get a lot of milk, and this was enough for a man to live. So, he was a very rich man. He never borrowed anything from others. He was a rich man and he was a happy villager, and he was rising to a patriot. And came independence after some days. India became independent on 15th August 1947, and now come to that period came independence. Now, independence is at the corner. Independence has already come to us. India became independent, and Sri Maharana was rising as a patriot, and the writer says a caste of patriots was emerging. It is a caste. He also describes it here in this text that there are 4 major castes in Odisha and in India also: the Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and the Sudras. There are 4 major castes in India, in Odisha, in India in general and in Odisha in particular. But when India became independent, another caste was emerging, the 5th caste. What was the 5th caste? Patriots. People, those who were doing something for the country, they were patriots. Patriots actually people those who love the country, love the motherland, they are patriots. So, another caste was emerging, and he uses the word patriot. The patriot is something different, but Mr. Sri Maharana is actually not a patriot, but he ironically says, the writer is quite ironical about Mr. Maharana. Sri Maharana was actually not a patriot, but he was emerging as a patriot in the sense, because the only thing is that he was trying to become a politician. He was trying to get power. He had money, he had wealth, he had riches, but now after all these things, what more is required? Power. And he wanted that, and he was emerging to be a patriot. This is what we find here. So, dear students, Sri Maharana was first becoming a patriot. He was first becoming a patriot, a PhD. He was emerging as a patriot in a quick speed, and he talks of the other character. I told you that there are 2 major characters, 2 leading characters here in this text. One is Babu Bir Kishore and the other is Sri Maharana. So, Babu Bir Kishore becomes the Minister of Fisheries and Fine Arts. Babu Bir Kishore becomes the Minister of Fisheries and Fine Arts. So, he has already become a minister. Once somebody becomes the minister, he has the power at his fingertips. The power is with him. He can control anything and everything, anybody and everybody. And if you please the minister, and if the minister will be pleased, he will help you. And Sri Maharana seeks blessings of the minister. It happens in society nowadays also. People, in order to get power, people in order to get some gain, they want to propitiate the minister. They want to satisfy the minister. If the minister is satisfied, then they can get some benefits, some gains. This is the thing, this is the thought they have in their mind. And Maharana seeks the minister's blessings. So, dear students, he therefore organizes a reception for the minister, and he becomes Maharana. Sri Maharana becomes the chairman of the reception committee. A reception committee was formed, and he becomes the chairman of the reception committee. And Maharana's ancestral Khan was there. they had an ancestral cane chair, very big huge chair, you know, he had in his house. You know, when a minister comes these days, a huge chair is required for his seat in the meeting, and this also happened when India became independent at the time, and Maharana brought a very big chair, a huge ancestral chair on which the minister would sit, and the chair was covered with linen cover, and it had a pair of herons, a pair of birds, water birds, herons, having two huge fish in their beaks. So, this was the picture, and the huge ancestral chair was covered with a lion cover with a pair of herons. This was the description of the chair. And again what happened? LP school students practiced the welcome song. How school is utilized for the politicians. That is also the the writer also hints at that. LP school students practiced, they are made to practice rather, the welcome song. Welcome song should be sung in honor of the minister. The minister will feel happy for that. And who had composed it? The village school head pandit, the school head pandit, headmaster, what you say, the head pandit of the LP school, who had never written any poem in his life, without any poetic activity for 67 years. The village school headmaster, head pandit, who had never written a single poem in his life within his within say 67 years, he composed the song, welcome song. And this is a ironical statement. A man who has no knowledge of poetry has written the poem, and the head pandit, without any poetic activity for 67 years, composed the song. So, this is an ironical statement. What is an irony? Irony means when something is said and something is meant. What the irony means? When something is said and something is meant. So, the irony is a part of poetic device. Irony. So, when you speak something, but the meaning is different. You speak something, but the meaning is different. So, it is a satirical thing actually. Irony is satirical. When something is spoken satirically, when you criticize something, somebody else, when you criticize somebody else, that is called irony. And here Professor Das, how he criticizes? He does not attack anybody. He criticizes, but in a gentle way, in a very mild way he criticizes. He says the head pandit, without any poetic activity for 67 years, composed the song. From this we know that the poet, had no experience of writing poems, but he wrote the poem, and this is an ironical statement the writer uses here in this text. The text is about the social aspect, the political aspect, and the poem is about the minister, and the poet is somebody, the head pandit of the school, who had no experience, but he wrote the poem. And you see the meaning of the poem, the literal translation of the poem. What would be the literal translation of the poem? The writer says, This is the thing that he says, "O mighty minister, tell us, do tell us, how do you nurse this long and broad universe?" This is all flattery, psychophancy, flattery. Flattery is also a part of satire. Sycophancy, satire, sycophancy means flatter, because sycophancy is a part of flattery, sycophancy is a part of satire, and he flattered the minister. "O mighty minister, tell us, do tell us, how do you nurse this long and broad universe?" Is it not flattery? "O mighty minister," the minister is very mighty, very powerful. We know one mighty, almighty is there, that is the only mighty, almighty. God is only mighty. But he says, "O mighty minister, O all powerful minister, tell us, do tell us, how do you nurse this long and broad universe?" How do you nurse the minister nurses? Only God only does these things. God nurses the universe, but it is not flattery. This is all flattery, and the poet, story writer Professor Das tells us that the minister is very powerful, as if he is more powerful than God. You know that the mystery of the missing calf is a text by Professor Manoj Das, and this is a story, and the title of the story is very apt and suggestive. The title is very apt, the title is very suggestive, Mystery of the Missing Calf. The calf of the minister is missing, and it remains a mystery, it remains unraveled, it remains undiscovered, but the final twist gives, it adds spice to the story. However, let us now come what happens in the story. In the story we have a narrator, a boy. Here is a boy who narrates the story. You may think, you may say that the writer himself is the boy, but the story writer uses a narrator. The narrator narrates the story, the boy narrates the story, and the story, Mystery of the Missing Calf, tells us through the narrator of the story. The narrator is the spokesperson, he narrates, and the narrator of the story has 3 questions in mind. There are 3 questions in his mind. The question number 1, he was a boy. Children are very innocuous characters, very innocuous, very innocent children, and as a child the boy is very innocent. And when the minister comes to the village to attend the reception, the narrator has 3 questions in his mind as a boy. He had never seen any minister before. This is for the first time the minister comes to the village, and he wants to see the minister. And before seeing the minister, he has 3 preoccupied ideas in his mind. 3 thoughts, 3 questions were there in his mind. The first question is, what does the minister eat? Whether he is a human being or not, whether he eats like a human being, or he eats like a god, or how? What does the minister eat? Is he a common man? Does he eat the food of a common man? Does he eat the food of food as the villagers do, or his food is different? So, what does the minister eat? What does the minister think? Does he think like a common man? He is the minister, because the poem goes, the song goes, "O minister, the almighty minister, how do you manage the world? How do you manage the broad and the long universe?" It seems as if the minister is more powerful than God, and the boy, as the narrator of this story, he has some peculiar questions in his mind, very strange questions in his mind. What does the minister eat? What does the minister think? Does he think like other common people, or his thought is different? He thinks differently. He should, because he is different from other common people. He is respected like anything. People respect him like anything. So, he is a different being. He is superior to anything and anybody and everybody. And the next is, does he sleep or not? Does a minister sleep like human beings, or he does not sleep? This is the second question. Another question he has in his mind, does he suffer? A very ridiculous, absurd question, because this sometimes children have some absurd questions in their mind sometimes, therefore, they are children. Children are very imaginative, they imagine different things. So, does he suffer from any colic? Colic means stomach pain, or colds, means any disease. Does the minister suffer from any disease like other human beings? This is humorous, this is humor. The kind of language the writer uses here is humor. Humor means to create a joyous situation, a happy situation, that is called humor. Maharana used 2 hours afternoon sleep before reception and gave it up before last 10 days of reception to examine details of arrangement. As he was the chairman of the organizing committee, he was the chairman of the reception committee, he has to take care of a lot of things, and in order to see and examine details of arrangement of the ceremony, he could not sleep for the last 10 days, Sri Maharana. And we have some words, typical words here in this text. Episode. Episode means event. Episode. You see, dear students, mark some words. Episode. Event. Nurture. Nurture means develop. Reputation. Reputation means fame. Then generous. Means willing to give. You see, episode means event, nurture means develop, reputation fame, generous means willing to give. And in this text we come to know that Professor Manoj Das tells you about Sri Maharana and Babu Bir Kishore. Babu Bir Kishore was the minister of fisheries and fine arts. Sri Maharana was his follower. He was organizing the reception ceremony in honor of the minister, and therefore, the reception was organized. He could not sleep for 10 days. It took a lot of time for him, and Sri Maharana happens to be a very he seems to be a flatterer. He wants to have political gain, and he is also playing political game for that. He was trying to rise as a politician. He wanted to be the real successor of Babu Bir Kishore. And another thing that we find here is that here is a boy who happens to be the narrator of the story. He narrates the story, and the story is narrated by the boy, the narrator, who tells everything what happens there in this story. So, Sri Maharana, who happens to be the well-to-do man of the whole locality, he is here and he tries to gain political benefits, political gains through psychophancy, and he organizes the reception committee in honor of the minister Babu Bir Kishore. And in the unit 2 of the text, we come to know something different, how the story rises and how the story, and you know that in the story we have 5 units, and as if it seems like the work of William Shakespeare. As in William Shakespeare's writings, we find there is exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, and anticlimax. 5 parts are there, and the story seems like that, and it seems as if we have these 5 things rolled into one. And Professor Manoj Das describes this story, gives 100% to this story in such a way that the Indian and Odia culture are described in vivid way. That is it, and we shall continue this text in near future. Thank you very much.